It's all too weird. It's just weird because it's the new camera still. Oh, that's why it's weird.
Dye up the yarn and then we're going to get to knit the blanket. Hang on a minute, Dan. My glasses have steamed up.
Nah, that feels better now.
I'm looking right into the lens.
Yeah.
In this series, I'm going to show you how to make... No, Sam intonated that wrong. Can I do it again?
Yeah. And I just remember going and I remember imagining where my life would be.
In 2015?
Yes. And the funny thing is, I absolutely didn't doubt that we'd have flying cars. That's so funny.
Why?
I don't know. It sounded like a radio, like we're on the radio. A lot of fun. Do a lot of work for charity, but I don't like to talk about it.
You sounded a bit like Cliff then.
Yeah.
My favourite blanket.
Oh,
my favourite
goodness.
blanket.
Yes.
You intonated that funny.
Let's just continue presenting the show. Welcome, everybody, to the Bakery Bears video show, and it's the very first show of a brand new year.
Happy New Year, everybody.
Yes, indeedy do.
2023. Goodness.
I know. It's like a Stanley Kubrick film. In fact, have we passed it now? What was it? Space Odyssey.
2001.
Oh.
We've way past that, haven't we?
That's shocking, isn't it?
If that's what it wasn't it 2001, A Space Odyssey. Yeah,
I know. That's just like too much.
And what was that? What Arthur C. Clarke was that?
Don't know. The other big date for me is the Back to the Future one.
Oh, that's way past.
And we're well past that one too. It's like, oh no.
Like,
I totally remember, because long-term viewers of the show will know, I saw Back to the Future quite a lot when I was young, and I just remember going and I remember imagining where my life would be.
In 2015?
Yes. And the funny thing is, I absolutely didn't doubt that we'd have flying cars. The funny thing is, how much better would it be if we did?
Yeah, I know.
Because you know how everyone always says, how far is it as the crow flies?
As the crow flies. Well, that would just be, how far is it?
I hope you had a lovely Christmas.
Yeah, did you have a good time?
We did. We deliberately didn't. I made a decision, and that was, I'm not going to make, and I said to Kate, don't make your lovely stuffing.
Yeah.
And also, funnily enough, the stuffing which we normally have was in the roulade.
It was. You know, the stuffing element, the sage and onion stuffing element.
Yes.
That's what I normally make. And I think I did say when I was making it that this is the stuffing I normally make.
And it is.
Because you can just squidge it into, like, stuffing balls.
Yeah.
And bake it in the oven. That's what I normally do.
But it was the day after we just... Oh, you made sausage rolls.
I'd made sausage rolls.
Do you remember it was 2021, Christmas 2021, when you did the three episode series of Kate's Handmade Christmas. She made cheese and onion rolls and also sausage rolls.
Yeah.
Made the traditional batch of those, which we're still eating and loving.
We are. There's some in the freezer still, I think.
Literally every Christmas.
Is there some in the freezer?
Yes, there absolutely is. Had some of those. Went for a run the day after, and it felt like I was running through quicksand. And I got, it was partway through the run.
You did eat quite a few of them.
Oh, I did.
You got a bit overexcited.
It's just because they're so nice.
Quite a high number.
So when I got home, partway through the run, I just thought, this is crazy. I'm not going to make the stupidly rich stuffing I normally make.
No.
And Kay, don't make your stuffing either.
No.
Because we've got an amazing stuffing, a gluten-free stuffing, Mrs. Crimble's sage and onion stuffing.
Yeah, it's really good.
Amazing.
It's a dried packet mix, and you just add water and a little bit of oil.
So much flavour.
It's fantastic. Yeah, Mrs. Crimble's. Isn't that just the best name?
Yeah, I know.
And very relevant for Christmas, wasn't it, really?
So we had that, and also there was a stuffing already in the chicken that we had.
There was.
Perfect.
Yeah, which was like a pork-based stuffing.
So we probably halved, given the fact that we also didn't buy a big chicken as well, which historically we've done, we probably halved the level of food that we were making.
Yeah, it's just all too much for me, Christmas food. I just can't...
So we definitely played it.
Can't do it anymore.
Better this year.
Yeah, we did.
Hope you did too.
Yeah.
But it's now 2023. It's a brand new year. And we promised you in the last show that we were going to start this year at a bit of a pace. Oh, yes. And, folks, I'm delighted to say that today's show is featuring Kay's brand new show. It's going to be an odyssey. lasting virtually the whole year.
Yes.
You're going to love it, we hope.
We hope.
We've been putting the finishing touches to the very first episode all the way through Christmas, and we hope that you're going to love it because, yes, today begins Kay's brand new series, My Favourite Blanket.
Yes, we're going to be starting a blanket, everybody. I hope you're ready. So I'm going to be dyeing some yarn. You're going to watch me do that.
But for those of you who don't want to dye yarn...
Don't have to.
Kay is also going to give you... Because I'm sure you mentioned ideal yarn choices and colours and things.
Well, I probably did.
Yeah.
Because each, as I've explained before, each of the 12... sections and each of the 12 colourways that I'll be dyeing up are all inspired by some kind of plant that flowers in that particular month. So the first one is January, so it's based on a plant that flowers in January. So you'll see the colours that I've used to dye up that plant. And you can, if you don't want to dye the yarn, you can just either go into your stash or go to a yarn shop or whatever if you wanted to try and sort of match the colours. But you don't have to do that. You can go your own way if you want to and do entirely your own theme.
Because, yes, she's dyeing up some yarn, but then for the first time ever, she's going to show you preparing the yarn, as in caking it up.
We're going to cake it up.
Oh, yes. And then it's time for the first time ever on a Bakery Bears video show for Kay to actually do a tutorial.
Yeah, you're going to sit down with me and we're going to cast on together. I'm going to show you what to do and then you can crack on with the first section.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
We're so excited about this show. It's really... I'm really excited. I've actually got 3 My Favourite Blankets on the go at the minute. I've become a little bit addicted. Well, that's good, really, because I was a little bit worried when Kay said, look, we should call it My Favourite Blanket, because my concern was, what if it isn't your favourite blanket?
Oh, yeah.
Clearly,
I would say definitely.
She likes it.
Definitely, yeah, because I've got one blanket which is the prototype that I've knit quite a way through now, just to sort of check everything works and numbers and sizes and all of that business. I've then got the one that I've cast on with you all. And then also over Christmas I've cast on another one which I will tell you about, but not until sort of later in the year, because I'm trying something out with this blanket as well that's really fun and exciting. So there's just literally not enough blanket knitting hours for me at the minute. I just want to knit them all.
And what's so lovely is this is an idea which, you know, Kay conceived really early on last year. So it's sort of been, it's definitely been 10 months in the making.
Possibly, you know, I have ideas and it might be that at the time I can't do anything about it, so I'll just jot down some notes and then... It's
been sort of lovely though, because my favourite colourways came about because of COVID. And it had to happen quite quickly.
Yeah.
So to be able to be a bit more strategic with the planning with My Favourite Blanket.
And I'm still kind of doing that because I keep changing my mind on the plants. And
I told her not to do this because she's got it written down in stone.
Yeah, I decided them all.
Ages ago.
Decided them all, wrote them all down.
And now she's second guessing herself.
All the colours. And now I'm like, But the thing is, once I started knitting it, I'm like, oh, now... You know, because I'm thinking what would look good next to that colour. And then, okay, I know what that colour's going to be. What will look good next to that one? And I don't want that same colour within 2 of that same colour. It's all those kinds of thoughts.
Yeah.
So I am still, you know, it's very organic. And if I want to change my mind, I will change my mind. Because at the end of the day, I'm going to do what feels most right.
Exactly.
Yeah, and you do exactly the same, you know?
Can I just tell you, I'm so ready for 2023. Because... honestly, My Favourite Blanket is just going to be so amazing.
Well, I hope so. I hope you enjoy it.
We've applied a bit more adventurous production techniques to My Favourite Blanket. Put Kay in 1 or 2 interesting environments to see how she would behave. Yeah. And it all works rather well. So, you know, that's just going to be lovely. You know, it's going to be so amazing seeing that sort of progress through the year. But then also, hot on the heels of My Favourite Blanket, we've got 2 episodes of My Favourite Blanket, so you can get cracking knitting your wonderful blanket.
Yeah.
But then February, that's when the rise and fall of the monastery start. Deep in pre-production right now, and I'm like, so unbelievable. This was always a subject that I was like super excited about, and all will be revealed as to the reasons as to why it's a subject so close to my heart. But what I've been like so blown away with is, first of all, the scope of the story of the rise and fall of the monasteries, but also as well, it's little things like the sort of the links between the Romans, which are just like so obvious.
Yeah.
And I didn't realise this. So the rise and fall of the monasteries is actually going to be really like a sequel to Walking the Wall. I mean, it's not, but there's so many links between the Romans and this story. It's tremendous. So it really does feel like a continuation of the wonderful adventures we had last year. But look,
it's going to be a lot of fun.
It is. We've got way too much to talk about today. Loads of wonderful What's on Your Needles, tons of What's off Your Needles. So without further ado, I'm going to say, Kate Jones, what's on your needles?
Okay.
I hope it is a needle.
It is a needle.
Excellent
It's all needles. And are they? No, they're not. Two new things. I've got two new things to show you this time. And the first new thing is a pair of socks for Dan. Now, these socks, right? Oh, I'm just loving them so much. For a few reasons. Look, I've got my little sock knitting book in here. I've mentioned this before, but I tend to... This one is just for Dan. This is a book that I keep. Every time I knit Dan a pair of socks, I make notes on it. Because, generally his socks are kind of the same, but sometimes he wants, in winter he likes a longer leg, in summer he likes a shorter one. It might be that a particular yarn knits up with a slightly different row gauge, so I have less rows, those kinds of things. Heels might be different, and I might have made a note on what fits Dan the best, and toes and things like that, and stitch patterns if I've put any in. And I just love keeping these in my sock knitting bag because I loathe having to go to technology. When I'm knitting, I can't stand, I'm like, oh, how do I do, just remind myself on the decreases. Sorry, the increases or whatever for a heel turn, and having to get my phone out or whatever. Oh, I can't, for whatever reason, I just don't like that. I like a bit of paper. So this one is a Hobonichi, I think, actually. Yeah, it's a little Hobonichi book, and I think I got this not this Christmas, last Christmas. And it's got little squares in it. It's lovely, a lovely little book. And it's just the right size to fit into a project bag. And it's got all of Dan's socks that I've knit for the past year or so, plus little doodles that I've been doing, which is fun. Yeah, I'm knitting him a pair of socks, and it's the yarn really that is the star of the show with these socks. Now this yarn, when I thought about knitting Dan a pair of socks, I thought, you know what, I'm going to use a yarn that I've been hoarding. I really want to use some hoarded yarns this year, because it's silly, isn't it? We all do it. I do it. I've got yarns that are years and years and years old because they're just too precious to use for lots of different reasons. This one is a fairly standard sock yarn. It's by Trekking, which is a German company. So it's Trekking XXL. So yeah, it's a German brand. 75/25 wool nylon. And you get, what do you get? 459 yards. So it's sort of a standard commercial sock yarn, I guess. What makes it special for me is actually, I say it's a standard sock yarn, but actually I think it's a really excellent sock yarn, and I'll tell you why in a second. But the colour, first of all, it's a discontinued colourway, so
don't get your hopes up. Don't
get your hopes up that you'll be able to find this unless you've got it in your stash. You might have it. You might have knit this up a few years ago. I'm trying to think how long I've had this, and it's got to be...
It'd be fun to know. Comment in the show notes below. Well, that sounds right. In the comments section. Comment in the comment section below to let us know if you've got some of this.
If you've got this colourway. So the colourway number is 126. And I don't know whether this had a name. The colourway, if there was a name to the colourway, I'm not sure. For some reason in my head I've got something like saltwater taffy, but I could be making that completely up.
What even is that?
Well,
is it salty toffee?
No. Someone sent us some of this. I think it was Gail from the Yarniacs. One sent us some.
Right, okay.
I think it was Gail.
I don't remember.
And we tried it. It was kind of like... It's sort of like a soft, chewy... It's not, actually, I wouldn't have described it as toffee, not the toffee that
So
we
more
would
like
know.
Fudge.
Maybe sort of in between fudge and toffee I found it, and
Right.
they do sort of different flavours.
Was it salty?
No,
Okay.
I don't think
Right.
the salt reference means there's salt in it. I can't
Right.
remember. Again, somebody I'm sure will tell us that lives in the vicinity
It
of...
must have something to do with salt water.
Well, yes, you
Yeah.
would presume, wouldn't you? I don't know. Anyway, but I could be completely wrong, but it's colourway number 126. So, run to your stash now, pause it before I show you the colourway, run to your stash and see if you've got it. But this is the yarn, and it's just fantastic. Oh, look at that. Isn't it just lovely?
It really is.
So it's like a mix of browns, sort of oatmeal, pink, and sort of like a caramelly colour. Oh, and isn't it lovely? And you can see on the foot here, on the plain bit, you can sort of see the colourway a bit better. Oh, I just love it. So I'm past the heel, I'm just on the gusset decreases. I'm not far off finishing the gusset decreases. And then I'll just be on the foot. But I just thought for fun, I'm going to put in a little texture pattern. So once again, it's knits and pearls because I'm, still there. Still in the knits and pearls zone. Oh, sorry, knit one, pearl one zone, I should say. So I did a cuff. I can't remember how many rounds, 15 I think, knit one, pearl one. And then I went into this little texture pattern, which again is just a mixture of knit one, pearl one, broken up with some plain knit rows. But it just, for a couple of reasons, socks just go a lot faster for me if there's a bit of something to do. And mainly because if, this is a 5-row repeat. So in my head, if I'm sitting down to knit on these, I will either go for 5 rows or 10 rows is what I want to complete. And I feel that just gets the sock done quicker rather than just sitting down and knitting a bit and not knowing what I've just done. I might have done 2, I might have done 3.
You've made a discovery this Christmas where you've decided that a target is a good...
What I've been doing, and this came about from my Advent knitting, because when you do your Advent knitting, you have a target every day, don't you?
Otherwise you don't finish.
So you break it down into a daily target. And I did that for some projects which I finished, and I'll show you those later. And I just found that I really enjoyed that way of knitting, having that structure. And I know a lot of people will detest this idea. So
everybody's different.
Each to your own, I'm just telling you really what works for me. And so what I've been doing since the sort of end of Advent, so around about Christmas, I cast these on in between Christmas and New Year. I thought I'm gonna do that again. I'm going to employ that technique again and see how I get on. So I've been doing that with 2 of my projects, with this one and another one that I'll show you in a minute. And I write it in my planner. So what I do is I take a sock, for example, and I know from my sock notes, because I keep notes, as I've said, I know from that how many rounds I knit for an entire sock. So I will then break it down to a realistic amount of rows each day. And for this sock, because it's a 5-row repeat, I've been doing 10 rounds. Sorry, not rows. If I say rows, it could be rounds. So I've been doing 10 rounds a day. So for example, the first day I did the rib. And then the next 5 days, because there's 50 rounds here on the leg, I did 10 rounds a day. And then the next day I did the heel flap and the turn. The next day I picked up stitches and did 10 rounds of gusset. And then just this morning I've done another 10 rounds of gusset decreases. What it does for me is it means that when I sit down to work on it, I think, right, I've only got 10 rounds to knit today. And I'm really enjoying it. I really enjoy it because I know that I've only got 10 rounds to do. And if I do that 10 rounds every day, I will very quickly have a finished pair of socks. I worked out that I think it would take me about 17 days to finish one sock. So I'll have a finished pair of socks for Dan in just over a month, which generally that would never happen. And I will have enjoyed it because I've finished knitting the 10 rounds, and every single day I've thought, oh, I want to do a bit more, and I haven't, because it's left me with that feeling of wanting to knit on it again. So it means that the next day when I come to pick it up, I'm really keen to knit it, and it's working like an absolute dream. I feel like I'm getting more knitting done. I'm enjoying it more, because I can just focus on that little bit I've got to do, and then I can move on to either another project or my other bit of work or whatever I've got to do. It's part of my planning. And what I've been finding is, after I've got that bit done that I wanted to get done on whatever projects, sometimes it's 8 o'clock at night and I haven't got any other time. Other times it might be, the days in between Christmas and New Year, when we've had a bit more time, it might be the middle of the afternoon, and then I'm thinking, oh, what shall I do now? And of course I've been picking up blankets and I've been working on those. So for me, I'm going to continue with this through this year. I'm using my planner, so each sort of couple of weeks I assess where I'm at with everything, decide what I want to finish within that next couple of weeks, plan it all in so I know I'm going to finish it, and then allocate time if I want to cast something on new, or if I then think about, right, what else have I got that I've not worked on for a while? I'm going to pick that up, I'm going to plan that in. And I'm just love this way of knitting. It works for me. I enjoy structure, I enjoy routine, I like knowing what I've got to do each day, getting it done, ticking it off, moving on. That really, really works for me. Like I said, it's not going to work for everybody. But if you're that same sort of person that really enjoys order and structure and routine, then you might enjoy giving it a go just on one pair of socks and see how you go on. I'm loving this sock, and the pattern I put in, when you sort of hold it like this, and it probably won't come across on camera at all, it's got a kind of ripple within the fabric, which is really appropriate because we've been watching Spirited a lot over Christmas. It's an Apple TV film with Will Ferrell and Ryan Reynolds, and we've just absolutely loved it. Have we watched it 3 times now?
Yeah.
And we've listened to the music all over Christmas, and Dan's favourite track on it is Ripple, which actually is a cut song from the film, and it shouldn't have been cut in our opinion. It's amazing. But it's just appropriate because that's called Ripple. There's a ripple in these. I like things like that. I just like that kind of association with something that Dan really likes. And I posted a picture of these, I think, on Instagram, or I can't remember. I think it was Instagram over Christmas. And one of the comments, I can't remember what it said, but it was kind of a bit surprised that they were going to be for Dan, presumably because they've got pink in. I don't know. Do you think?
No.
They're not. I mean, I suppose, Dan will wear anything.
Please be surprised.
Yeah, I've not got a problem at all.
Me neither.
With these being for Dan. And although I've hoarded the yarn for a long time, I still prefer to knit things for other people. So I get more enjoyment. If I was knitting these for me, I'd be enjoying it, but I wouldn't be enjoying it as much because I know that Dan will wear these and really like them, and I don't know, I just prefer knitting for other people.
Yeah.
Dan Jones?
Yes.
What's on your needles?
Well, first of all, let me show you the yarn, because the yarn is just amazing.
Lovely.
This is, what is it?
Jameson
And Smith.
Jameson and Smith.
You see, together, we got there in the end.
Yes.
It's tremendous yarn. That's the most... Oh, no, I had that colour up here.
Yeah, this is number 4. I think it's called Brown Mix, this one.
Yes. And it's really, really lovely to work with. It's great for doing colour. Look at this lovely colour here. Mm. It's just gorgeous. And then that's that brown one there that Kay just showed you.
Jumper weight. 2-ply jumper weight. I was trying to think of the name.
Also used a bit of this as well, which it's obviously all Jameson Smith, another of the colourways, and it's just lovely. Really great to work with. I'm wondering if it's split splice. What do you reckon?
Yes, it should do.
That's exciting. So I've never split splice with fingering weight before.
There's no, and it's only 2 plies, so it'd be easy to split. But yeah, it should absolutely. Look at that!
Yeah, I know. Look.
Sorry, I was overly excited.
Look, there's loads. It's marvellous.
Can you see? Look how much he's done.
So it takes quite a while because there are 310 stitches per round.
Yeah. No, there's more than that.
There's more than that. I've done increases.
You've increased.
I did loads of increases.
You did?
336.
Is that what it is?
It is. Yes, because I increased 26 stitches.
Right.
I might be one out, but I think it's 336, which is just amazing. So
this is the roosty top.
I thought you were showing the chart then.
No.
So
it's the roosty top.
Knitting this loads over Christmas because I felt that after teasing you last time with a tiny bit of ribbing, I needed to really get cracking and get into the colour work, and it's been great. There's been no points where I've been like, oh no, this is such a mistake.
And it's really bizarre because I changed all the colours. This is in black and white, obviously, because the colours in the photo here, there were sort of greens and blues, mainly sort of blue shades, and oranges as well, I seem to remember. Blues and oranges, I think it was. And that's just not my favourite sort of colours. So I changed all of the colours and I recharted it with the colours. So I can't obviously show you those, but the colours you've seen come through, there's like a red, there's an oatmeal, there's a brown, and there's also a pale pink and a caramel. And I said to Dan, oh my goodness, it looks like this sock.
Yeah.
The colours are very similar, so that's obviously what I'm drawn to.
So I'm using size 3.25 mil.
Wow, you did the American size thing. How did you know that?
Chiagu.
Keep going, darling, it's fun.
How do you say it?
It's fun, keep trying.
Chiagu.
Well, I think it's Chiagu.
Chiagu.
But
I don't know.
I think it's Chiagu.
I'm sure it is. I'm certainly not claiming to know what I'm talking about. I just use what Kate gives me. And they're perfect. Initially, in the early rounds, it was quite sort of hard work on the old fingers.
Yeah.
Just because, whilst I have loosened up, I'm not that loose. And so, pushing and shoving definitely needs slipping needles.
Lovely. I'm going to love it so
once
much.
I was through the first few rounds, because it's twisted, isn't it, rib?
Yes.
Yes. So once I was through the first few rounds of twisted rib, everything was fine. So the yarn's amazing.
It feels and looks great.
It's knitted up great.
I can't wait to wear it. It's going to be amazing.
There's the odd little discrepancy with the stitches and just getting my technique exactly right, but overall it's pretty good. And I'll talk about it at length next week in the next episode of the Self-Contained Knitter. Lots to tell you. I
bought Dan some new needles actually for Christmas that were recommended to me by one of our patrons. Thank you, Diana, because I bought some. They're Knit Pro. I'm going to review them. They're called Knit Pro Mindful. Go and have a look at them. I've been using them to knit another blanket. Shock horror. They're fabulous. The reason I'm associating it is because the cables are like the Chiagu cables. If I didn't know anything about these needles at all, and I went and looked at them and I thought, oh my goodness, this looks amazing. And they are, so far, I've knit a good chunk of blanket using the needles. They're absolutely lovely, and they spin. In the join, they spin as well. I'm really, really loving them. So Knit Pro Mindful, go and have a look for them. And they weren't super expensive either. But I am going to do a review on them, a full review.
Cool. What else is on your needles?
So the next thing this is another gift actually, but it's a gift for one of Bryony's school friends. How fun is this? Now, this friend of Bryony's, she's a lovely girl. We've met her loads of times. Over lockdown, she's the friend that Bryony was FaceTiming every afternoon, and they were talking about BTS and keeping each other going. And, it was really a saviour for Bryony in terms of social things, and I think the same as well for her friend. She's a lovely girl. She's funny. She's, really sociable. She's so chatty with us. She's been for tea a number of times and we've taken her out for trips, and, she's such a nice girl.
So you're making her some lovely mittens and they look amazing. I'm making her,
she's the same age as Bryony, and it's the birthday next month, so she's 17 in February, but she's suddenly discovered Harry Potter. And this to Bryony is the most hilarious thing. in the world, because she'll come in each day and she will have read a bit of the book or she will have watched another bit of a film and she's like, oh my word, this happened. And Bryony's like, you know, this happened for Bryony, 8 years ago or whatever. So it's really funny that she's super enthusiastic. So I thought, do you know what? I'm going to make her some fingerless mitts that are Harry Potter inspired for a birthday. And I remembered in my stash, again, deep stash, I remembered in my stash I'd got some yarn that I'd actually knit Bryony some socks with quite a few years ago. And I got a good chunk of leftovers. And it's a Harry Potter themed. I thought, do you know what? I think I've got enough. And I have. So I'm using it, which is brilliant. I've had this stashed for ages. But I dug the socks out to show you because she actually hasn't worn these very much. I asked her why and she couldn't really give me an answer. Kids, who knows. But the yarn is a self-striping and it's from a company called Piggy yarns. Now, I've had a look on her, I think it's an Etsy shop. I've had a look and she's not currently dyeing, unfortunately. So again, don't go hunting for this right now, but you never know, if you follow the Etsy shop, I think you can sort of like follow it, can't you, an Etsy shop, then, and put your notifications on. You should, you'll be notified when she comes back. So it's a self-striping, it's called 9 3/4. And what's amazing about this yarn, not only the colours, but it's the base. I've never heard of this base before. It's an 80% superwash blue-faced Leicester, 10% cashmere and 10% nylon. So that's just such an amazing blend, isn't it? And you get 425 yards for 115 grams. So it's a slightly thicker yarn as well. It's a really nice plump fingering weight. I don't know if I'd go so far as saying it was sport weight. I don't think it's sport weight. I think it's just a really plump fingering weight. So these are the socks that I knit for her. You might remember these. So here are the socks. Oh, aren't they lovely? And she really hasn't worn these very much. There's a little bit of wear on the heels, but not very much. So, I might steal these from her because I don't think she'd notice. So you can see they've got all of the Harry Potter colours in there. What I like about it is the Ravenclaw colour is the original book colour. So this blue, oh, I'm showing you the wrong sock. This blue and brown here, this is Ravenclaw according to the book rather than the film. Because what colour is it for the film? I can't remember. They changed it, didn't they, for whatever reason? I don't know. But it's all of the house colours. So I'm knitting some fingerless mitts and they're so fun. I weighed it and I'd got 52 grams left. So I know for a pair of fingerless mitts for me, generally it's about 40 grams that I use. So I should be good. What I'm going to do is I'm on the hand now. Well, it's all hand. Well, that's a weird thing to say, isn't it? I'm on this bit rather than this bit, but it's all your hand. I don't know. It's not like you can say leg and foot, is it? Wrist and hand. Oh, you know what I mean. I'm on the top bit. And here it is. Look. Oh, how fun. So I've done my thumb gusset. And I'm on the hand. So I'm going to keep weighing my yarn and just make sure that I'm okay with grammage. Because I can make the hand bit sort of longer or shorter, can't I, really? It can go sort of right up to here or it could be a bit lower down and they'd both be fine. As long as then I've got enough just to finish off the thumb, which will be a tiny amount, won't it? Really, that shouldn't be a bother. But aren't they just super fun? And I hope she'll like them.
Oh, she'll love them. They couldn't be more the right colours if you tried.
Yeah, and it's funny because Bryony this morning said, she's been texting me and saying, she really wanted to wear a new Slytherin jumper that she got for Christmas, but she was worried about wearing it for school because she didn't think it, she thought, will people make fun of me for wearing a Harry Potter jumper? I said, what? No. Why would they?
Not at her age, no.
No, absolutely not. Tell her to wear it. She's like, oh, Mum, she really wants to wear it. I said, Bryony, tell her to wear it. If she wants to wear it, wear it. So she is. So she got it on today. But she also said, Bryony, that she'd got a pair of gloves as well because she's a Slytherin. She got a pair of Slytherin gloves.
I think she isn't.
No, she wants to be a Slytherin. That's right. But I think it came out as Gryffindor. but she wants to be a Slytherin. I think she took the test about 1 million times because it kept coming out.
I think, though...
Be whatever, you can say you are whatever you are, can't you, at the end of the day?
I don't know if that's right. I'm not even a Harry Potter aficionado, but I would say if you do the test asks specific questions to see if you have the traits of that particular house.
So. Yeah, I guess
And clearly, she does not have the traits of a Slytherin.
Of a Slytherin, no, which isn't a bad thing. That's not a bad thing, is it?
I would say it's the opposite of a bad thing.
Yeah, Slytherin are not the nicest of house members generally, so it's not a bad thing. I think she really likes Draco, and that's why she wanted to be a Slytherin. Yeah, so these are my lovely fingerless mitts, and I need to really get these finished. I can't remember the exact date of her birthday, but I think it's early on in February. So I'm going to employ my system and get these finished within the next couple of weeks.
Amazing. Cool.
But it's gorgeous yarn because of the blue-faced Leicester. It's kind of silky. That makes it silky, but also still woolly.
That's the new way to say it this year.
Blue-faced.
Now say it with real meaning like you did the second time when you got it right.
Blue-faced.
Yes. That's the trick.
So yeah, I'm really enjoying these. I'm using 2.5mm and there's 56 stitches on here.
Cool.
So, yeah.
So, socks. Last time you saw these, they were just rib. And
just
now...
rib. They're more than rib now.
Way more than rib. I have been absolutely going for it on these. I mean, you'll think there's going to be a whole sock. Remember, it's me. What's hilarious is when, the fingering weight jumper, you have to sort of position your mind. Because, as knitters, anyone who's done a bit of knitting, you'll sort of know what's achievable in a certain amount of time. Well, it suddenly all changes when you dramatically go down in the thickness of your yarn. And initially, it was quite depressing. And that's why I say, the self-contained knitter next week, I'll sort of go into detail. But very quickly, I think... half the battle is, I think, when you try something new, there's so many things which can appear which have got the potential to knock you down. And certainly, if I was not the type of person that I am, if I was perhaps... if I set my mind to something, I normally continue with it and do it. And I know there's lots of different types of people, and I suspect if I, had succumbed, and I could have succumbed very easily, then I would have stopped, and I would have just gone, no, DK's the way. The other thing I was actually going to say about the Jameson and Smith was, I think actually I get the feeling that it's going to be more of a favourite of mine than Little Opie is. I love my Little Opie jumpers, but Kay's already looking for yarn, or is in the process of looking for yarn.
Yeah.
That I might be able to use.
Jameson and Smith do an Aran weight, and I'm going to compare the Aran weight.
Because I'm not knitting myself a fingering weight.
I'm going to compare the Aran weight of Jameson and Smith to Little Opie and see if it is comparable.
Because I don't really know if it
will be.
If it's possible, I really quite fancy doing that.
There's not as many colours by far.
Don't get me wrong, Little Opie's amazing.
There's enough.
Crumbs, folks, I've got 3 of them, and I've employed them perfectly this winter. You're heading out for a walk, it's a bit wet, it's a bit windy, stick on one of your Little Opie jumpers with a body warmer, and you're off. I mean, literally, you can't fail. But this sock, look.
Oh, it's lovely.
It's perfect. I mean, just perfection.
Tell you what I'll do.
Kay did this for me specifically. The last few times.
I did this for you.
You designed this
Thank
for
you.
me specifically. Oh, okay.
Or maybe I'll just forgot it was DPNs. So
yes.
Maybe I'll just sort of stretch it out a little bit.
Yeah, that got me worried then. This is brilliant, this sock.
Hang on.
Because, what Kay's so good about doing is she'll sort of put little elements of things in which just sort of test my ability a little bit. So at the end of each of these needles, I've got some twists to do, and the right twist and the left twist, they really sort of work out your technique, and I love that. And also as well, the lovely sort of bar that it makes in the middle, that sort of, it's just tremendous, and it goes so beautifully then with the cables. And I was so keen to do a bit more cabling, so just perfect. Yarn's really fun. You know, all in all, it's just a fun project.
Yeah, so this yarn I dyed is the Always colourway from when I dyed After All This Time and Always. And you wanted a sock that's got cables, basically. So it's around both sides. It goes all the way around the leg. So I used a horseshoe cable, and then I kind of made up this little mock cable using twists, left and right twists.
And it creates like a lacy, holy effect.
It does. It does create a little hole in the middle of where you do the twists.
It's fun.
So it's a really nice.
It's
really
weird
nice
when you're doing
feature.
it on DPNs because, you know, it's like you're ending and starting, but then you have to remember that then you'll be joining the next time through.
Yes, that's
it's
right.
Fun.
And, you know, if you were working on Magic Loop, obviously that would be different. You wouldn't have to mess about as much as that. But
It's perfect though for DPNs because you've not got anything flowing over. I know you designed it specifically that way, which is just brilliant.
I designed it in a way so that the stitch... The pattern repeat is 16 stitches.
Yeah.
So it fits on each of his 4 needles because I knew he was going to be working on DPNs.
Yeah.
And also if you're on Magic Loop, that also works perfectly because you get 2 repeats across each needle.
Yeah.
And you've not... I didn't want it to be where you'd got half a pattern repeat over a needle. I think that's more difficult to remember than than having 16 stitches on that needle. I do that, and then I do the same, then I do the same, then I do the same.
Yeah.
And that works really well.
So, just love the yarn. I've got no issues. I used to have a pink shirt, actually.
Well, it's sort of what this
I know
colour
this isn't pink.
It's violet. I would call it more violet. It's a combination of that colour that's in between pink and purple, I would say. It's like a violet-y sort of colour. It's beautiful.
I really enjoy more. He says sat here in a black shirt, but I do. And look, I
mean, it's deep reddish, but we're a bit.
I definitely don't have an issue in wearing
today.
garish colours and using garish colours. You know, I'm very much.
I wouldn't particularly call that garish. I think you've been insulting to my colour.
Sorry, garish is the wrong word.
It's bright and sort of slightly neon, isn't it?
I'm absolutely, you know, a lover of, you know, the more sort of bright in your face colours, and I do love to wear bright in your face colours sometimes. I think it's great. But I'm thinking of one pink shirt in particular that I put on one Christmas when our daughter Bryony was a baby. Went into sort of, you know, she was right at that point where she didn't get what Christmas was, and we're obviously so excited because it's Christmas, and we go in all excited having a pink shirt, and she just burst into tears.
She did.
So I had to take the shirt off and put something else.
Yeah,
and then she was happy.
You did, yeah.
It's funny that, isn't it?
I miss baby Bryony.
Isn't it funny, you know, when kids are so small that they don't understand that it's Christmas?
No.
And, you know, as parents, you're like, it's so funny, isn't it? It's so easy to fall into that trap of, you know, they're going to have such an amazing time. To them, it's just another day.
It's just another day. And, you know, it's funny, isn't it? Because, you know, with birthdays when Bryony was really little, we didn't do parties for her until she reached an age where she could remember having the party. Because I just think you're not doing it for the child, are you? You're doing it for everybody else because the kid's not going to remember it. No. Especially when they're like 1 and 2.
Yeah. What else is on your needles?
So the last thing I've got to show you is another pair of socks.
It isn't.
Yes, it is.
My goodness.
Yeah, I've finished one of the socks and I've started the second. And it's my... Snow White Rumples. Ooh, these are so lovely. I blocked this first one that I finished. Well, I didn't block it. I washed it and laid it flat to dry. I just wanted it to even out and just be as lovely as possible to show you, but I'm going to put it on a blocker. So this is my pattern, my rumple socks. And I'll say again, actually, because a couple of people have referenced this recently and called it rumpled with a D on the end. And I just don't want people to get confused if they go looking for it and it doesn't come up. So it's not got a D on the end. It's rumple, as in Rumpelstiltskin, because that's what it's inspired by. So it's the rumple socks. And this version, this is the third pair I've knitted now. And it's inspired by Snow White. So if you've watched... Once Upon a Time, because that's where this whole idea came from. This is my Snow White version, and look how lovely that is.
Was it just... I mean, it seems so appropriate that you should be knitting a Snow White sock at Christmas time because of the whole pantomime link.
No, that wasn't... It wasn't deliberate.
I wonder why that became a pantomime. I suppose.
Well, all fairy tales.
Yeah, that's true.
Fairy tales and... Yeah, I mean, are they all fairy tales?
I think so.
I suppose they are, aren't they? They all tend to become pantomimes, even if they're not actually Christmassy themed at all. Most of them aren't, are they? Peter Pan and Puss in Boots and all those kinds of things. So, yeah, these are my Snow White rumples. So you can see it's this gorgeous textured pattern, which just looks amazing, I think, in the white. And the only breaking up of the white is this pale blue heel, because in the series, Snow wears this hat quite a lot, which there is a free version of it on Ravelry. It's called the Mary Margaret hat, because that was her human name. And it's like a lace hat, and it was in this gorgeous pale blue. So I thought I'll add in that pale blue as a little touch for the heel. But other than that, this is just an undyed skein of yarn.
Yeah.
This is the base that I dye on generally. It's an 85-15. And I'm in a lovely rumple sock. So I've finished that one. And I cast on the second one literally immediately that I'd finished that one. Cast off the toe. I hadn't even woven in the ends. Thought I'm going to get the second one cast on. And I'm just into the second pattern repeat of the leg. Again, I'm employing my system of planning this in, doing a little bit each day, and again it's just working brilliantly. I did the rib the first day, I did one repeat the second day, and I've just this morning, I didn't have time to do any more because I did my 10 rounds on Dan's sock, and I've just started a new repeat on this one. And it's just lovely, and I've been so thrilled to see so many rumples popping up over Christmas. I think a lot of people used it as a Christmas Eve cast on or a Christmas Day cast on. I no longer do a Christmas Eve cast on, and in fact, I don't think I cast on. Well, Dan's socks was the thing that I cast on, but that was like maybe the 28th or something. It wasn't because it was a particular day. I just wanted to start them. I don't cast anything on new now over Christmas because I just find it's the wrong time of year for me to sort of commit to something. But really enjoyed working on the Snow Whites over Christmas.
It's an interesting point, I think, that you make with regards to the whole, planning it out thing.
Yeah.
Because something that you do hear about, and I've seen a few people say this recently, and I wonder if it's because you like push so hard over Christmas with stuff, with the whole losing your mojo.
Yeah.
And actually, a really good thing to do when you're in that situation is to just change your approach just slightly.
Yeah.
So if you're like a obsessive planner and you have lost your mojo, stop planning and just go with it. But equally, if you're not a planner and you're looking to get your mojo back, then perhaps do a bit of planning, and then you'll get that reward of seeing what you've achieved.
Yeah, that's the other thing for me. I'm seeing progress constantly instead of something might lie in a bag for a week, and then I'll pick it back up. And during that week, nothing's happened on it. And all right, you've been doing other things, but I just really like seeing. I prefer to see a little bit of progress every day. I suppose it's a bit like walking, because. Like last year, my target was to walk every single day, and I did it. I walked every single day last year, and I walked about just over 750 miles last year.
Amazing.
So I've, set myself a new target for this year, but it's not stretching. I've just set myself a target of what I did last year, because it's about maintaining that regularity, and I would rather go out every day and do just 2 miles than go out 2 or 3 times a week and do 4 or 5 miles each time.
All the sort of books that you read will tell you that's the right way to do it.
Yeah, I just think little and often is, for me, it really works. 45 minutes a day outside in the fresh air, no matter what the weather is, hot, cold, whatever, is just that little bit of time for you. And I don't know, it just sets me up. It really sets me up for the day. I've gone out and I've done that, and now I can get on with the rest of my day knowing that I've had that exercise, I've had some vitamin D, you're keeping yourself healthy, aren't you? And it's a bit like that with the knitting, it's little bit and often just seems to work for me, and I enjoy it more.
Speaking of setting ourselves up right for the day, it's a brand new year and it's time for a brand new show. Yes, for the first time ever, Kate is going to teach you actually how to do something.
Yes.
It's going to be marvellous.
Yes.
Teach you how to do something.
Prepare yourselves, everybody.
Teach you how to do some knitting. She's going to be knitting a gorgeous blanket. She's going to be showing you how to dye the yarn and so much more. This is the start of a brand new odyssey. Yes, welcome to my favourite blanket.
I adore creating and knitting blankets, so I decided to design a new one just for us. In this series, I'm going to show you how to make your own, from the yarn to the stitches. Join me as we knit through the seasons to create my favourite blanket. Welcome everybody to a brand new series. I'm so excited. Now in this series we are all going to be knitting. I'm calling it my favourite blanket because that's what it has become, but I'm hoping it will also become your favourite blanket once you start knitting it. So during the series, I am going to show you exactly how to knit the blanket, and I'm also going to be dyeing up yarns. So there's going to be 12 sections in the blanket, and we're going to be doing 12 dyeing sessions as well to accompany that. So each time what I've done is I've chosen a particular flower or plant or tree or some growing thing that produces a flower in the particular month that we're working on. So because it's 12 parts, there's going to be, I've treated it as kind of 12 months of the year. It'll run a little bit shorter than that in actual reality, but each of the 12 parts, so we're going to start January through to December, and I've chosen a flower or a plant that, like I said, flowers in that particular month. And we're going to dye up the yarn, and then we're going to get to knit the blanket. So the first flower or plant, I should say, that I've chosen for January is actually a honeysuckle, and I know that might sound a bit strange, but it is a winter flowering honeysuckle. It's called Winter Beauty, and it flowers on the bare branches, and the flowers are white with a kind of green back to them, and then yellow stamens, anthers, not quite sure what they're called, and then the stems are, you know, sort of a browny chestnutty sort of colour. So what we're going to dye is 2 skeins. One of them is going to be the flower colour, so we've got greens and yellows going on, and then the other one is reflective of the bare branches, kind of frosty because we're in January, it's freezing cold, and the bare branches will no doubt have a bit of frost on. So Honeysuckle Winter Beauty is our first flower. It's absolutely gorgeous, you should look it up, and I wanted to immediately buy one and plant it in the garden. It's really lovely. So that's what we're going to be dyeing, and then we're going to be casting on our blanket and getting started. I can't wait, I'm so excited. So the first thing we've got to do is get out of this cold weather in the kitchen and get dyeing the yarn. Okay, so what we're going to need to dye up our lovely yarn today. So first of all, we're going to need the yarn. So I've got it actually soaking already in here, and what I've got is 4 50-gram skeins of fingering weight yarn. So it's, you know, the usual yarn that I would use, except it's in 50-gram put-ups, if you like, rather than 100 grams. And I've got 4 of them because I'm going to do 2 of each of the colours today. Now, if you can't get hold of 50-gram skeins, then you can just do 2 100-gram skeins, and then you would just have more leftovers effectively from that 100 grams, rather than what I'm going to do is I'm just going to work from 2 of the 50 grams from a blanket, and I'll have 2 extras then to either give away or, you know, use for something else. So it's fingering weight yarn, and this is an 85-15 blend that I use really, really often. If you're looking to buy some yarn, I actually buy it from a company here in the UK called Yarn Undyed, and you can buy it in smaller quantities. You don't have to buy a commercial amount of yarn. You can buy it in much smaller quantities, and you can get the 50-gram skeins from there as well. So I've got those 4 50-gram skeins pre-soaking in some water with some citric acid in there, which is our mordant, and I'm pre-soaking it in the citric acid to get all of the fibres soaked through with the water and with the acid, so that our dyes are going to take really nicely. So that's our yarn. We're going to need our pots to dye in. So I've got 2 pots here because we're doing 2 colourways, and I always dye in these sort of round casserole pots. These are stainless steel, and everything that I use for dyeing, only use it for dyeing, because dyes are toxic, so you don't want to use any of your equipment for anything else other than dyeing. So I've got 2 stainless steel pots. I've got a mask, of course, and something to protect my work surfaces because I'm just dyeing here in the kitchen, and I've got a spare piece of oilcloth and just some old tea towels. I've got my big mixing spoon, some gloves, and I'm using paintbrushes today, so I've got some paintbrushes in there, and my normal measuring spoon, which is in 1/8 of a teaspoon measure. And then finally my dyes. So I'm using 4 dye colours today. We've got, actually I'm using all the brands that I normally use, but I will tell you the sort of colour it is, and then if you can't get the exact shade, you should be able to get something similar. So I've got 2 greens. First of all, I've got a landscape green, and this is called Alfalfa. This is like a sort of mossy green, lovely colour. I've then got Dharma dyes, and this is Sour Apple. This one is like a really lovely, bright, vibrant green, sort of like the green of a Granny Smith's apple, maybe a shade darker than that, but a lovely, vibrant green. I've then got a yellow. This is Chamomile from Landscape Dyes again. This is like a slightly golden yellow. And then finally, from Jacquard, I've got Chestnut, which is one of my favourite colours. So that's the 4 dye colours we're going to be using. Our yarn is already soaked, so we can get straight over to the stove and start the dyeing. Okay, so I've got some water heating up here. Now, there's not a lot of water in here at all. I would say it's probably got about 1 inch of water. And I've got some more citric acid in there, just sort of a spoonful, like a tablespoon, or a scoop in my case. It's about a tablespoon, I would say. So I'm not using a lot of water for this first colour because we want it to be nice and speckly. So I'm going to go over and get out 2 of my 50-gram skeins. Just squidge them off. Give them a little shake just to loosen all the fibres so they spread out nicely. Then I'm going to drop them into my pot and just move them around so that I've got a good amount of surface area of each of the skeins. So we've not got a lot of water because we don't want the dyes to disperse too much into the water. So you can probably see the skeins are just sort of laying on the surface. There we go. And then just turn up the heat. And I'm just going to let that come up to temperature because when you put the skeins in, it will have just lowered the temperature a little bit. That just takes a minute. Okay, so that's simmering nicely now. So I'm just going to turn the heat down just to keep it at that nice temperature. And I'm going to put in the first dye, so I'm starting with the greens. So for this colourway, I'm using the 2 greens and the yellow, and we're going to use the chestnut in the sort of coordinating or accompanying skein, I will say. So I'm going to start with the alfalfa, and we're using our paintbrushes for this. So into the dye. This landscape dye tends to be very granular, so you can kind of scoop up quite a lot on your brush. And I'm going to go in and sprinkle over, you know, quite fairly liberally, but in different areas like this. Because we are going to be knitting this into the blanket, which involves, in this first section, we're going to be doing increases very regularly. I'm not too concerned about any sort of pooling, because those increases will really help in disguise it. So really what I want from this colour is lots of quite bright speckles. So that's why we're sort of just choosing areas like that and going in with the alfalfa first of all. Okay, and now go straight to your next green, which is the sour apple. This one is more of a powder, so you need to be more careful with this. And I'm going to go over the same area, so over where we've just put the alfalfa, I'm going to sprinkle over some of the sour apple. So we're going to get a nice layering of greens there. And you should be able to see straight away this is a much more vivid green. That's lovely. So you can see when we get to those little sections there, we're going to get a really nice bright pop of colour, which is what we want. But we do want to maintain some of the white areas as well, because this flower does have a lot of white. There we go. So now I'm going to go straight to my yellow, to the chamomile in my case. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the areas that are currently still white, and I'm going to go into those areas with the yellow, but not quite as much, because the yellow is just the little, are they called anthers or stamens? I'm not quite sure. Just in the middle, so there's not as much yellow going on. So just find an area like that that doesn't have green, and just give it a little bit of the yellow. So we're just going to get little spots of yellow running through. Where have I missed? Let's put a bit there. And because we've not got a lot of water going on, it's going straight onto the dye. And it doesn't matter if it sort of bleeds out a little bit and gives us a bit of a yellow hue around that area, that's fine. So now I'm going to leave that for just a few minutes. Don't touch it, don't mess with it. Just leave it as it is for a few minutes, just to set those colours that we've got going on there. And then we're going to move the skein and then repeat that. Okay, so that's just had about 5 minutes now, and I've given it a little test. If you want to just test that your dye is set, if you just get your big spoon or whatever your spoon is and just sort of lightly press down into an area, and can you see how there's no bleeding? If you just look at that water, it's clear there, so you know that that's set well. If we just look at the yellow, same thing. So we're good to move that. There might be a few specks of dye here and there that haven't fully set. Don't worry about that, it won't matter. So what we're going to do is lift them up as always, and if I do that, you'll be able to see as I lift them, can you see how this side doesn't have as much of the dye going on? This side has got all of the action. So what we're going to do is just rearrange them a bit. So just move it, about a third along I find that that gives then a nice randomness. And also turn it like that. Sometimes I do this, sometimes I don't, but I am going to today. So turn it. And that will also then give you a good amount of dye on the other sort of side of the yarn. And then drop it back down, and as we go in, just again rearrange it so that we've got a good surface area. And you can see at the moment we've got some lovely areas of speckling going on there, but plenty of white still, which is great. We do want to maintain that undyed section as well as having the bright speckles in there. So now you can see we've got lots of area to go at here. Some we've got green already on bits, that's fine. You know, some areas will stay undyed. So now we're just going to repeat what I did before. So I'm going to pop my heat back on. I turned it off because it was boiling quite rapidly. I'm going to pop it back on now, and we're going to do the same thing again. So start with your alfalfa and go for areas that don't have any dye. And same thing, so give it a nice layer of the alfalfa. I've got a gap over here in the corner that can have some. And a bit there. And we've got a bit over here that's out of the water, that can have some. So that's our alfalfa, and we're now going to go in with the sour apple, which is the more powdery one, so just be careful. And tap it over the same areas that have had the alfalfa. And then finally the chamomile. So again, I'm going to go for areas that don't have green. So just find little gaps. There will be some, and just sprinkle on some of that yellow. Just sort of having a little assess and see whether I want any more in there. A bit there maybe. I think that's good. So now just push up the temperature. Just get that bubbling nicely. Let it bubble for just a minute or two. That'll be plenty hot enough to set it. And then that's that first colour done. We can then just pop that outside to cool down and get on with our second skein. Okay, so on to our second skein, which is going to be a really gentle tonal. So in my pot here, I've got almost half full of water with another scoop of citric acid in there, and that's heating up nicely now. So I'm going to put my dye into the pot. So the only colour that I'm using for this is the Jacquard Chestnut. And I've discovered, I mean, although you would think of chestnut as a brown, it is a brown, but when you use just a little bit of it, it produces this colour which is like a sort of cool, aged gold. That sounds really weird when I say it, but I see it as a really sort of delicate vintage gold, but not yellow gold. I don't mean yellow gold. I mean that sort of shade of gold, which is like, I don't know, just an old sort of colour. You'll see anyway when we do it. But all I'm going to do is go in and get probably just less than half of an eighth. You can see there. Just drop it in. And I'll just judge it when I give this a stir as to whether I think I've put enough in there. I might just add a smidge more because I want this to be a delicate colour, but I want to be able to see it when I'm knitting it up. I'm just going to add a tiny smidge more. So it'll still be less than half of an eighth that I've put in there. There we go, that'll be good. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop my yarns in. That's better, that's about the colour I remember when I've done this before. So you'll see at the moment it does look like it sort of looks a bit treacly to me, but it does seem to have a kind of golden hue coming through there. Yeah, that looks fine. It also sometimes looks a bit purpley, this dye colour. It's a really, interesting dye colour. So make sure it's stirred really well, like that. And what we're going to do is we're going to take our two skeins and we're going to drop them in, but slowly, because what I want to happen is I want a graduated effect on this, because again, we're going to be knitting this in with increases going on all the time. So I want to get some slight variation in the colour for this as we're knitting it. So I do deliberately want to make sort of one end of the skein darker than the other, which is fun because I normally avoid that, and this time I want it to happen. So here we go. Squidge. A little shake. And here we go. So we're going to drop it in slowly. Get your spoon. I'm just going to turn the heat down a little bit. So drop it in slowly. I'm just going to check the colour. Yep, that's good. So just drop it in, but really slowly. Because, you know, you can stop for a second and then move it a bit further down. This bit that's in the water already, I'm moving it around so that it gets more dye. And now we can just pop it in a bit quicker. Can you see the colour, what I mean when I say it sort of reminds me of gold? So it can all go in now. And you can see what's happened. You can see the variation, can't you, with the colours? The dye's very quickly been used up. So at one end, it's very neutral here, but then can you see here, we've got more colour, which is just what I wanted. That's going to give us interest when we're knitting. Some areas, you know, when we knit them together, when we knit this bit here together with the other yarn, it's really the, you know, the green and the yellow are really going to pop against this. Whereas when we hit this slightly darker area, this will kind of take over a little bit, and it just adds more interest and makes it more fun to knit anyway. That's what I find. So this is just the right colour, and this colour, as I'm sure I will have already said, is representative of the bare branches of the honeysuckle in winter. So it's that kind of, you know, frosty bare branches that you've got going on with the bright green and yellow of the flowers. So all we need to do now is turn that up, let it come to temperature, and that colour will be done. Okay, so that's our second yarn dyed, and it's reached temperature. I've turned it off. I'm now going to put it to cool. Now, I was going to put it outside, and it stopped now, but it started snowing. I had to go outside and quickly whip in the other pan. So I'm now going to let the yarns cool down fully. I'll be rinsing the yarns, getting them dried, and then we'll be starting the knitting. But all of that is for part 2. So I will see you back soon when we are going to cast on our lovely blanket.
My goodness, we so hope you enjoyed that. We're a little bit nervous because yes, it's sort of similar, but it's very different. My goodness, Kay Jones in the wild.
I know.
We thought it was such a vital part, though. It was
so cold as well that day.
Yeah, such a vital part of the story because it's all inspired by nature, this blanket.
Yes.
I mean, just beautiful.
Yes.
And what a perfect, just gorgeous plant to start with.
Yes, honeysuckle. And I kind of wanted to choose plants the whole way through that might not be what you expect me to choose. For example, January. I mean, would it be snowdrops? Would that be the thing that people thought of? I mean, are they even January or are they February? I'm not sure. But anyway, yeah, winter honeysuckle, gorgeous. And it's so funny because I was... I think it was on his Instagram feed. I follow Monty Don on Instagram, and he posted about the exact honeysuckle, saying how he loved it and that it was much maligned or something for being a bit of a thug. I think that's what he said in the plant world, but he absolutely loved it. So I was like, yes.
Perfect. And you haven't even seen the cool bit yet.
No.
Because part 2 is when we get down to the nitty gritty and we start actually doing some knitting.
Yeah.
And she? Who's she?
Who's she?
And Kay will actually start teaching you how to make my favourite blanket.
Yes.
It's going to be so exciting.
Yee.
But before that, we've got...
What? Sorry, I'm excited.
She's like a little Christmas elf. No, you can't be anymore.
No,
gone back
in the book. Although Bryony doesn't put her elf on the shelf away anymore.
She never did, any.
I think it might have gone away the first year we got it, because you're meant to put your elf on the shelf back in the book thing, aren't you? You're meant to go away anyway.
And then burn
She
it.
felt sorry for it, and she didn't want to lock it away in the book thing, so her elf's just out all year.
Look, there's way too many amazing things to take a look at.
Oh my gosh.
Oh yes.
Finish so
Christmas
much.
period is most definitely a time of finishing stuff for Kay. Oh yes. So without further ado, let's find out. Kay Jones, what's off your needles?
Absolutely loads. I finished so much. But the first thing I wanted to show you is my Scrooge's stocking. This was the design for our advent calendar this year, and we did a knit along for it all the way through December, and honestly I don't think we've ever had as much enthusiasm for any design I've ever done. It's just been overwhelming, to be honest. Just amazing, and so many beautiful stockings have emerged.
Just absolutely.
So yeah, I've knit 3 of these, and I think I showed you like the top bits of them, didn't I, before? But I can show you the whole thing now because it's finished. So I can't get it all on the screen. It is a big stocking. I think people, I did see a lot of comments saying this is huge, and I don't know. I didn't consider it to be particularly big.
It doesn't have to be full.
No, you don't have to fill
My
it.
Christmas stocking wasn't full when I was young.
No, I mean it
have to reach down
has
and put
got a
things
long leg, but it's obviously a shorter foot because that's generally how stockings are. So you can see, look, from the toe, we've got a Latvian braid down at the toe, and then some texture and stripes. We've got this lovely swirly colour work, a lovely butterfly heel, which is my design, some trees, bricks, snowflakes, London town reflected in the river, some more snowflakes, and then that's it. That's Scrooge's the top of his stocking, what do you call it, nightcap, and then a lovely hanging loop at the top.
Beautiful.
So that was the version that I knit when people were watching, and then this is another colour version I did, just gorgeous. And then this one is the prototype, which I changed a little bit, but these, I think the colours are so nice I had to show you. So more sort of traditionally festive, I guess. But you can see this section here, I changed it so that it had 2 colours going on. But yeah, that's the sort of prototype. And I used Blacker Yarns DK, Blacker Yarns Blacker Swad DK. And it's Falklands Island merino, and they spin it with a little bit of Shetland. I think most of the colours have got a little bit of Shetland spun in with them. Absolutely gorgeous yarns to work with. And we've now got 3 Christmas stockings to last us forever, basically.
Yes, definitely.
Which is a lovely thing, and that's what a lot of people were saying, that they're going to make them for all of their family, and that was just such a nice thing to know that so many more of these will be being made. So that's all my Scrooge's stockings.
Scrooge's stocking is the first Platinum Collection pattern of 2023. It will never be available for sale, but it is available free right now this year to gold and platinum patrons of the Bakery Bears.
Yes.
So if you are a gold patron, you'll get access to that pattern, and then also, as the new ones come out this year, you'll also get access to all of the other 3 Platinum Collection patterns that come out as the seasons change. And our platinum patrons get access to all the Platinum Collection
Permanently.
And that is like, I mean, it must be 20 patterns now.
It must be, yeah.
There's loads.
Yeah, must
what
be.
else is up your needle?
Right, so I finished my little festive cowl that I was making. Do you know,
gorgeous.
I dyed these yarns up. Can you remember? This was the last dyeing, my favourite colourways, wasn't it?
Gosh, I mean,
before Christmas.
It's just, I do really appreciate the speckles on that. I mean,
yeah, I mean, that green colourway just came out so fantastically. And I knit as much of this as I could, but I wanted to save a little bit, and I don't know if I've got it. I might have popped it into my stash. I literally had maybe 10 grams left. I didn't want to use it all. I wanted to have a little bit left.
It'd be heartbreaking if you've lost it.
No, I haven't.
Right.
I saw it this morning,
No, I haven't.
so it's somewhere around. I've got that many finished things. I can't find it, but yeah, and I just put in some of these little stripes in that bright red that we dyed up.
Beautiful.
And then just plain knitting and a lovely broken 2x2 rib at the top. So that's one little cowl finished.
Gorgeous.
I finished another cowl.
Wow.
This is one of my Advent projects that I knit through December, and I did manage to keep up with both of my Advent projects. However, this is the cowl that I knit using my own dyed Advent calendar. However, this one has only got 21 of the colours in because it got to the length and I thought, oh, do you know what? This is long enough. Also, I thought if I go all the way and use, because there was 25 of minis in this calendar that I dyed up, it means I'm going to be knitting it still on Christmas Day. And I just had this thing in my head this year where I wanted everything wound up and finished by kind of Christmas Eve at the latest. So I thought, right, okay, I'm going to finish at 21 days because I think it's plenty long enough. And these are all the lovely colours. So this Advent calendar I dyed themed on the book Winter Solstice by Rosamund Pilcher. I think it just came out lovely. And again, I used a 1x1 rib to break up each of the colours, which I think just works perfectly. It just defines it really nicely and you see all of the colours. So that was the cowl.
Amazing.
So another thing I finished really close to Christmas was my Hobbity socks. This yarn is from Moustache Yarn, lovely Stacey, and it's called A Very Hobbit Christmas. And
Perfect.
I just loved these socks.
Yeah.
I popped in a little texture pattern. I loved it so much that I actually wrote up the pattern and I put it into the festive Christmas Knitability. And I have seen some people already knitting up.
Loads have. And that magazine's out now. And that magazine goes out to all our patrons. So whether you are bronze, Radio Show listener, silver, gold or platinum, you get access to the latest issue of Knitability. So you can actually go get that now and knit these gorgeous socks. Yes, and I just love these so much. This yarn is just completely fabulous. And it's a full pattern, actually.
It is a full pattern.
It's a full pattern.
It's a full pattern.
So for $2, which is like half the price of your normal patterns.
Less than half price.
Less than half price of your normal patterns, plus loads of great articles.
Yeah.
You can knit the Hobbity socks.
Yeah, it is a full pattern. And I used, for the heel, I used a Sherry Iris, heel and toe, I used a Sherry Iris mini, which I think worked really well.
Yeah.
And the colours are just fantastic. I think even though not all of the individual colours are necessarily Christmassy, overall, I think it looks really festive because there's lots of greens, lots of reds, lots of golds that run through.
Definitely.
Love them.
Yeah.
So they're all finished. And I do have, so I wanted leftovers because I want to make some mitts. I want to make some Hobbity mitts. And I'm going to do that because, oh look, there's a piece of tinsel. There's a piece of tinsel in my project bag.
Some people would call that angel hair.
Angel hair?
Yeah, or lametta.
We call it lametta, don't we? I think this is actually pulled off tinsel, what we would call tinsel.
What I would call
rather than lametta. Yeah. But I do have 2 little balls left over. I think these are round about 20 grams each, I think, and maybe a little bit less. But I figured if I got another mini, this is another Sherry Iris mini, so I thought if I paired those together again, I could make some Hobbity mitts.
Yeah. Perfect.
So I've left those in my lovely festive bag. This is one that I made from our Stitchy U last year.
2022.
So I'm leaving those in that bag, and then when I feel the urge to make those mitts, that's all ready to go. So then the second to last thing that I finished, can you believe all these finished things? Honestly, I was so thrilled. I was on such a mission beyond all missions.
So there's another thing after this?
There's one more thing after these.
What's after this?
The things that are on your feet currently. So yeah, I finished 3 pairs of socks, 2 cowls, and then all of the Christmas stockings, although I didn't knit those at that time. So actually 6 things. I finished 6 things.
Let's see these socks.
So these are my Advent socks, and this is the full Advent calendar that I dyed up, the Winter Solstice Advent calendar. All of the colours are different apart from the toes. The toes are day 25 for both toes, and then days 1 to 12 and days 13 to 24 are all of the other colours.
Perfect.
And I'm just so thrilled with them. I knit these at the same time as my friend was knitting hers because I dyed her an Advent calendar as well. So we were sending each other pictures of our socks, which was really fun because we've got identical socks. So yeah, these are all done and just lovely, and I absolutely loved knitting them. I think I overcommitted, I'll be honest, with my Advent projects. I overcommitted. I'd got the socks and I'd got the cowl and I'd got a bunch of other things I was trying to finish. So this year, I almost said next year, this year I'm just going to do some Advent socks again. I don't know in what yarn. I don't know if I'm going to dye something myself or what I'm going to do, but I know that I enjoyed knitting Advent socks so much, and just having, I think it was 11 rounds in this, 11 rounds each day to knit with a new yarn is just so fun.
But then the best socks of all
are
on my feet.
I finished literally on Dan's feet, so I've just taken a photo which you'll be looking at. I finished Dan's Christmas socks and I used pretty much all of the yarn. This is all I've got left from 100 grams of a commercial sock yarn, but I didn't use a contrast. I just used the same yarn the whole way through, and I just got this tiny bit left. And this is Head Over Heels from Stylecraft, and it's in the Cupid colourway. And I spoke about these socks last time and about the yarn, so I won't go into any more detail. I did really enjoy knitting the socks, and I think the colourway is fantastic. It's so festive and just lovely. Would I buy this yarn again? Probably not, because it did have a couple of issues for me. But for the price point, I think it's great, and the colours, like I said, are so festive and brilliant. So if you are looking for some more kind of budget-friendly sock yarn, I would definitely recommend it, because it's perfectly lovely. And you've worn them all over Christmas, haven't you? They've been in the washer, came out fine, and he's got them back on his feet again.
Gorgeous. I love them.
That's all of my finished things. Did that do well? Who do I sound like?
Bruce Forsyth.
Bruce.
After all of those gorgeous projects, I think it's time that we all got back to knitting what's going to be most definitely our favourite blanket.
Get your needles ready, everybody.
Yes. Let's return for part 2 of Kay's brand new series for 2023, My Favourite Blanket.
Welcome back, everybody, to My Favourite Blanket. So we are just about ready to cast on our lovely blanket, but before we do that, we've just got to cake up our yarn. Now, I've got my 2 skeins here. You can see these are 2 50-gram skeins. We've got the lovely speckledy one and then the tonal to go with it. So what I did with this was I rinsed it, and I used a little bit of Eucalan in the water. You can use soak, you can use Eucalan, you can use whatever you want. You just want a gentle wool wash. Gave it a rinse. Hung it to dry, and then I've got the lovely skeins here all ready to wind up. So I thought this might be fun just to show you how I cake up my yarn and what I use. And at the moment, I mean, I've used various things over the years, but at the moment what I've got is a Knit Pro. It's this one of these big wooden ones. I'm not sure they've got a specific name, but you can see what it is. It's one of the Knit Pro wooden ball winders, and I've also got a Knit Pro Swift here, which is clamped to my desk. So I'm going to show you exactly how I deal with the yarn to get it from these lovely little skeins into 2 cakes ready to start knitting. Okay, so my ball winder I've got here, and it's clamped to my desk. The clamp comes with the ball winder, so you just have to make sure it's clamped down. And then I've got my Swift here, so I'm going to just unfurl the skein and then pop it over the Swift. I always make sure that the skein is not twisted at all, and that's fine. And then you pull it up. Now, what I will say about this ball, this is not a ball winder, this is a Swift. What I will say about this Swift is, I do kind of have problems, you know, are you supposed to be able to just lift that up like that and it moves smoothly up? It never does for me. I have to sort of pop my thumb there to get it going, and then it'll move up. I don't find it the easiest thing to use, in all honesty, but it works. So right, so we've got it on the Swift, and now we need to snip our ties. So I always snip the tie that is holding everything. Oh, I say that and now I haven't. Usually I snip the tie that is holding everything together last, but clearly I haven't this time because that's the one that's holding everything together. So let's do the other ones. That one, and that's the last one. Sometimes it's difficult to tell actually which one is holding the skeins together. It depends how the yarn's been tied up. Okay, so let's go back and find our ends, which are here, and then what you will have, there'll be one end that's coming away from the outside of the skein and one end that's on the inside of the skein here. So you need to grab the one that's coming from the outside like this, and it's that one, and then we feed it through this little metal feeder, and then there's a slot here and you jam your yarn into that. And then what I like to do is I just sort of hold on to the yarn here, and you just need to get it going. There we go. And I just hold the yarn here and we wind. Now, an issue that I've had with the ball winder recently is I find that the tension, the plastic rubbery tensiony thing, I can't remember the name of it, it slips off. If I wind too fast, I find that it just flies off, and at first I thought that it had just become loose because I'd had it a little while. So I got a new one and popped it on, and it still does it occasionally. So now I have to sort of really not go too fast because it's a little bit temperamental. It's not, I wouldn't, you know, all overall, you know, because these are both Knit Pro, I would probably give them maybe 6 or 7 out of 10 if I was going to score them as, you know, usability, if you like. But you know, when they finally give up the ghost, I will do a bit of research and get some new ones, but they work at the moment, so I persevere. So I'm just going to carry on winding this one until we've got a lovely cake, and then I will get the tonal one wound up as well. Okay, we're getting to the end of this skein now actually, and just the last thing I wanted to show you is how to, I suppose there's no skill to taking it off the ball winder as such, but what I like to do, because if you just sort of pull that off now, you might find that the centre of the ball sort of can slip out. So I like to just grab that end that we looped over here and sort of now grab hold of your cake, push it off, and as you push it off, I'm going to tuck that end inside. So you'll get to a point where there's now a gap. I just tuck it and hold it inside like that, and then you get a nice neat skein, and the middle bit doesn't pop out, which can sometimes happen. So that's the first one caked up. I'm going to deal with the second one and then we can get to the knitting. Okay, so here I am for the very first time on the video show in a tutorial setting. So we're about to start what will be a 12-part tutorial series on how to knit my favourite blanket. So I wanted to first of all tell you a few things about the blanket. So it's a corner-to-corner blanket, so we're going to start knitting at one corner. We're going to do increases, we're then going to knit a section that will be straight, and then we're going to do decreases. So a lovely corner-to-corner blanket. Now each of the 12 sections uses 2 50-gram balls of fingering weight yarn. So the 2 that we've just dyed up, so each time we come to knit a section, we will have 2 fresh new skeins of whatever the colour will be. If you want to knit along with me, then you are also going to need 2 times 50 grams of fingering weight yarn for each section. Now you won't use quite all of this. I've designed it in such a way where there is a bit of leftover. in case there's differences in gauge and things like that. So you will have a little bit of leftover from each of your skeins. So 2 times 50 grams of fingering weight yarn for each of your 12 sections. You're going to need a 4.5mm needle. Now I start off with a 80 centimetre cable and then I move up to 100 centimetres. Once your stitches, you will know when your stitches start to get a bit crowded on the needle, move up to a longer cable, and then that's the longest you will need. So 80 centimetre up to 100 centimetre. You can just start it off using the longer cable if you want to, but I just found it a bit more convenient on the slightly shorter cable to start off with. So 4.5mm needle, 80 centimetre and 100 centimetre cable. So whilst gauge isn't crucial for this at all, it's a blanket at the end of the day, so it doesn't matter if it's a bit smaller or a bit bigger with your gauge. I'm going to let you know what my gauge was. So the basis of the blanket is garter stitch, and I got 21 stitches and 30 rows in garter stitch. So when I say 30 rows, when you look at garter stitch, you see those sort of ridges. So that's actually 15 ridges, because each of those ridges is 2 rows of knitting. So 21 stitches and 30 rows to 4 inches is my gauge. Don't worry if it's a bit less or a bit more. It's, like I said, it's a blanket. It's not really crucial. The finished size of the blanket, an approximation, is about 100 centimetres by 140 centimetres. The only other things that you are going to need are a tapestry needle just for weaving in your ends, and then I also use one of the little lockable stitch markers. So you can use a pretty dangly one if you want to do that, or just a plain lockable marker is absolutely fine. So that's all of the kind of technical details, if you like. It's time now to cast on. I've got my 4.5mm needle on an 80 centimetre or 32 inch cable, and I'm going to be holding my 2 yarns together through the whole of the blanket. So each section holding your 2 fingering weight yarns together. So the first thing I'm going to do is cast on just 2 stitches, and I do that using long tail. So we don't need very much of a tail, it's just 2 stitches. So cast on 2 stitches. That took all of 3 seconds, didn't it? So we've got our 2 stitches. So now there's a little 2-row setup before we start in with the repeat for the first section. So first of all, what I'm going to do is I'm going to knit front back into both of these stitches. So I'm going to double my stitch count. Okay, so knit front back into both stitches. So knit into the front and then knit into the back. And then same thing on the second stitch. There we go, so we've now got 4 stitches. Turn. And then we're just going to knit these 4 stitches. Okay, so that's our little setup done. So now we are into the kind of body, if you like, of the first section, and it couldn't be simpler. Now all we're going to do is on every row, so every row is the same, we are going to knit to the last stitch and then knit that last stitch front back. So in my case here I'm going to knit 3 and then knit front back. Turn, knit to the last stitch, knit front back. It's literally as simple as that. So let's just get going. So each time we complete a row, we will have increased 1 stitch. Knit front back. So that first row we did was a right side row. There is, I mean, technically it's garter stitch, and I suppose you could say there isn't a right and a wrong side. However, because we are changing yarns each section, you will get a little blip of colour. So it's good to distinguish the right side from the wrong side. So we've just completed a right side row there. So same thing again, knit to the last stitch. And then knit front back. And that was a wrong side row. And the reason I've just remembered which was right and which was wrong is so that I can now attach my locking stitch marker. Now that I've got a little bit of kind of knitting real estate under my needle, I know that this is the right side and I can just attach a locking stitch marker here. So you can move this up as you knit, you can move this up so that it's sort of more underneath your needle, just so you can keep track of which is the right and which is the wrong side. So I now know this is the right side. And I can just carry on knitting that same row. So knit to the last stitch and then knit front back. Now the reason I chose to do an increase like this, I tried lots of different increases for a corner to corner blanket, and I came to the conclusion after trying lots of things that I preferred the way that the edges looked by doing an increase at the end of every row instead of at the beginning and the end, and then just having like a plain knit row as your second row. I didn't like the way that looked because each of the edges looked different, because on one edge you'd increased at the beginning and one edge you'd increased at the end, and that produced edges that looked slightly different. And I wanted to just have the edges of this blanket looking as neat as you possibly could have them. So, I spent quite some time doing lots of different samples, and this was my favourite. And it also means that every single row is the same. You don't have to really remember where you are because every row is the same. All I'm going to do is knit to the last stitch and knit front back. Lovely, lovely, soothing knitting. Now you want to carry on repeating this row until you have 116 stitches on your needle. So I'm just going to do a couple more rows just so that you can see what it's starting to look like, and then I'm going to go away and finish my first section, and you can do the same. So let's finish this row and then we can just have a little look at how it's developing. And I'm loving knitting all these little green pops of colour, isn't it lovely? So knit front back for the last one. Okay, so you can see now if I just get rid of the end of that needle. So there is our one corner, so effectively you look at it like that, I guess, because we're knitting on a bias because we're corner to corner. So there's our corner, and you can see how lovely and neat the edges are. And what I actually wanted this blanket to look like, I didn't really want to see any increases and decreases on the edge. I wanted it to look as much as possible like the knitting just ended, and you couldn't really see anything distinctive as being a decrease or an increase. And I'm really happy with how that's turned out. So there we go, you can go ahead now and knit your first section. Just carry on working that one row repeat, knit to the last stitch and then knit front back the last stitch until you've got 116 stitches. So there we go, that's everything you need to know to knit through your first section of my favourite blanket, and your favourite blanket, I hope. Now, just one thing I wanted to say is if you don't want to dye your own yarn or you're not in a position to be able to do that, then you just need to go into your stash and choose 2 yarns that you think will work nicely together. If you've got a yarn that's similar to the colours that I've dyed, then great, use that, but you absolutely don't have to. It's entirely up to you. So what you could do is if you've got a couple of leftovers, for example, you've knit some socks and you've got some 50-gram leftovers that you like, put those together and use that. You could just use one 100-gram skein. If you've got one that you really love, then you can just split that into 2 and use that instead. Do whatever you want to do. It's entirely up to you. It's your blanket. So, if you want to follow along with my colours, then that would be lovely, but that's absolutely not essential. It could be that you want to choose your own theme. You might not want to follow with my theme. You might want to choose your own, or plants and flowers where you live might be different, and you want to go with different colours of plants and flowers for each of your months and seasons. So adapt it to however you want to, and whatever is going to bring you the most joy. But I'm just so super excited to start this journey with you. It's going to be almost a year-long journey. We're going to knit through the seasons. We're going to we'll be in winter, then we'll be spring, summer, autumn. It's just going to be so much fun, and I can't wait to show you each of the sort of flowers and plants that have been my inspiration each time. So there you go, you can all now start knitting through the first section of your blanket. I'm going to start on mine right away because I'm so excited, and the colours are looking gorgeous. I can't wait. So I hope you really enjoy knitting through this first part, and I will see you next time for more My Favourite Blanket.
There we have it. 10 months in pre-production, and finally the first episode is out. My goodness, I don't think we've ever been so excited about a show.
No.
Because, you had a few messages, didn't you? Because we put out a little trailer to both of our patrons, and people were worried about it falling behind. This is not a race.
No. I had quite a few messages from people wanting details, wanting to know what the flowers were that I was going to dye, wanting to know what the needles were, wanting all of these sort of questions, because they were worried that they wouldn't be able to keep up each time with the knitting. Whilst I would love to share every single detail with everybody, that's just not the point of it. The point is that it's a gentle sort of knit along, and it might be that you knit through each section really quickly. Great. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did knit through it quickly, set it aside for a little bit, go and knit all your other projects that you're working on, and then the next time I put another show out, pull it back out, dye your yarns if you want to do that, choose your yarns, and knit your next section, and just take your time and relax through it. We're
sort of excited, I think, about that community element of it, the fact that it's going to flow through the year, and we'll all do this together, which will just be
absolutely
wonderful.
And our patrons will be getting a little written copy of the pattern each time,
and that's all patrons.
Patrons
for just $2.
Yeah.
So if you're a $2 a month patron, for example, right now, if you were a $2 patron, you could go get the Knitability and the Hobbity socks, and you will have the printed, written pattern for this section that Kay's covered today on My Favourite Blanket, and that'll be the same for every episode. So $2 patrons and up will get the pattern as it is released, as Kay teaches you it through the course of the year. So that's an extra little exciting
just an extra little thing
that you can print
for our
off.
Patrons. Yes. Yeah, but if you're not in that position to be able to do that, then and you wanted to have something written down, just get a pad and a pen and jot down what I'm doing each time, and you're away. You don't even need to do that, to be honest. Now, as you saw, that first section is really straightforward. You can just sit down, cast on, knit away, and do what I've said to do. So I've got my section here just to show you,
and just because people are bound to ask, if you're looking for the printed pattern to go with My Favourite Blanket, it's linked in the show notes below. So just look in the show notes below, follow the link, and that will take you straight to our Patreon post with a pattern on it that you can download and keep.
Yeah. So I've got the first section completed to show you. So as I said in the episode, it's a corner-to-corner blanket, which I've never done before, and I spent a ridiculously stupid amount of time looking into increases and decreases. And honestly, it became kind of a bit of an obsession, because I'm sure I said on the show that what I wanted for the edges of this blanket, I wanted it to look like the knitting just stopped. I didn't want to see those increases and decreases. And I think as far as I possibly can, for me personally, I feel like I've achieved that. And, you know, in the look of how neat the edges are. So you will always, I think I also said, but you will always have a little bit of leftover. From the first section, there's a little bit more than you will have going forward. So I had about 14 grams each leftovers. I think I used just over 70 grams in total for the first section. So here's those two colours, my little leftovers. So, you know, you've got a little bit left over. You can pop those into a scrappy project, which is fun, isn't it? And the reason I've done that is two reasons, actually. One, I wanted to have a bit of leeway for people so that if your gauge is drastically different to mine, you won't have an issue. But also, it was to do with the size of the blanket. I didn't want it to get too enormous. This is a nice sort of, as I'm sure I said the size, I'm certain I said the size in the show. It's a nice, good size lap sort of throw. You know, you could probably get two people under it, but it's not some massive blanket because, you know, you'd have all of that weight on the needles. I wanted to keep it a good size. So that's another reason why you've got a little bit of leftovers each time. So here's my first section. So we're corner to corner. So at the moment it looks like a triangle, but obviously it's going to go like that. And there's my finished section. Isn't it lovely?
Gorgeous.
The yarn just worked out so prettily.
Yeah.
You can see how the edges are just so beautifully straight.
Yeah.
And, it just makes me so happy.
Yeah. Cool.
So that's the first section.
And the most exciting thing is my favourite blanket will be back next time.
Yes.
Oh, yes, in the next episode of the video show, which will be out in 2 weeks, you'll have your next instalment of My Favourite Blanket.
Yeah.
So you'll have made a good chunky bit of knitting done
you will.
prior to it becoming a monthly show.
Yes.
Yes. It's time for the Endy Bits.
Endy Bits.
So, ladies and gentlemen, Kay has already mentioned Scrooge's stocking, which is the first Platinum Collection pattern of 2023.
Yes.
There will be another 3 patterns which
Yes.
release as the seasons change, and you've got something to say about those patterns.
I do. So, there'll be 3 more patterns through this year. March, June, September. So it's as the seasons change. And I decided to do something a little bit different this year with those 3 remaining patterns. And I won't say exactly what it is, but there's a connection between the three patterns. And because there's a connection, I wanted to dye up some yarn that I'm going to be using throughout all 3 of the designs. So it's going to be just a lovely flow through the year. And I got a colour in mind of what I wanted to dye. I did actually go looking for a colourway to buy, to use, and I did purchase a couple of skeins. But
They were different colours when
they were different colours. I had one skein, which I purchased not that long ago, maybe a month or 2 ago, and I really loved it. I thought, right, okay, I'm going to go and get another one. And I did, and when it came, it was a completely different colour, even though they were called the same thing. It honestly was so different. So that wouldn't work, but I'll use the yarns in something else. So I thought, I'm just going to go and dye myself a colour. So this is the colour that'll come up. Now, it's coming up a bit more orange than it actually is.
Just a touch.
It's more of a nutmeg.
Yeah.
Imagine a sort of nutmeg brown colour. And I've got 2 skeins, and these will be playing a part in my 3 designs that are coming through this year.
It's very exciting.
Yes, it's
Kay's
very
approaching
exciting.
the Platinum Collection this year in a different way to what she has
Look, that's more the colour. If I
in
hold
previous
it back here.
years. So watch this space. It's going to be really fun.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, really fun. I'm really looking forward to it. So that's exciting. So I've got some gorgeous yarn to work with.
Oh,
and there'll be
yes.
other yarns involved as well. It's not just these.
Our radio show, Kay mentioned actually earlier, she spoke a little bit about Spirited. We did a radio show where we spoke absolutely, completely about Spirited and the reason why it appealed to both of us so much and some of the hidden messaging in Spirited, which you could miss, but actually when you spot it, it makes it such a current and poignant
and relevant
and
so
emotional
relevant.
and just tremendous.
Thought-provoking.
Kay
all
also
of those.
spoke about a book that she's listened to over Christmas and absolutely loved. And our radio show will actually be back next week. And don't miss that because, I have a feeling we've been having quite a few, we haven't completely nailed down what the episode's going to be, but we have had quite a few questions.
Oh, right, okay.
So we might do another question one, but watch this space. You seem to enjoy the last time we did a question one, and if we've got enough, we'll do a question one.
Cool.
But if we
That'd
haven't,
be a good way of starting the year, maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
If we've got enough, hopefully, we should be good to do another. It's like question time. With the Bakery Beth. Also, after the Advent calendar is finished, our regular programming has now returned. So, Kay started the year with her design diary. She's talking about the rumpled socks. We've had a review. There's more reviews coming, tutorials coming. Self-contained knitter will be back for a regular monthly run again.
And we've got Valenvent coming up next month.
This is the big thing. Oh, yes. Advent may be over. Bakery Beth's Advent calendar may have finished, maybe last year. But fear not, because, the next best thing to Advent, it's Valenvent, baby.
Yes. And I'm going to send out, you will have already had it by the time you watch this, actually.
So Bakery Bear patrons, this is a special event just for you.
Yes.
And it's for all patrons.
Yeah. So I'm sending out an email, which, like I said, that email will have gone out by the time you watch this. So just go and check your inboxes, just detailing what you will need for Valenvent, what yarns, what needle, etc.
So we'll be talking about Valenvent at length in our we do a monthly patron-only show. It's very similar to this, but we broadcast it live so we can interact. That'll be going out on the final Sunday of the month, and that'll effectively be the Valenvent launch show.
I think it's the 29th. I might have looked that up the other day.
And then there'll be a very special post going out on the 1st of February, and Valenvent will be off.
Yes.
1st to the 14th of February. Oh, yes. We've got to love a bit of Valentine's Day.
Well, it's fun, isn't it? The thing that we're going to be doing is very relaxed, very fun. What's the word? Everybody can get involved. You know, you don't need to have a particular skill level. It's very straightforward.
Perfect.
Yeah, perfect.
But we've got January to enjoy first.
Yes.
And there's so much to enjoy in January. Most important of all is going to be the next episode.
The next episode.
Of My Favourite Blanket.
Yes.
And that'll be happening when we see you in 2 weeks.
Yes.
So thank you so much for watching.
Thank you, everybody. Get casting your blankets on.
Oh, yes, we can't wait to see. So you can share them on Instagram. You can obviously share them if you're a Bakery Bear patron. You can share them in the patrons private Facebook group.
Yeah.
And yes, on Instagram, you should tag them. Hashtag My Favourite Blanket.
I guess, yes.
Yeah.
Hashtag My Favourite Blanket.
Perfect. So go ahead, yes, and get knit in your blanket. Share with us your pictures. And we can't wait to share with you the next episode, which, as we said, is coming next time. With Bakery Bear's Video Show. So thank you so much for watching.
Thank you, everybody.
And we'll see you in 2 weeks
for more. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Sitting and knitting, it's Dan and Kay, the bakery bears. Enthusiasm's not quitting for Dan and Kay, the bakery bears. They'll take you to fabulous places of which their favorites they'll share. You better buy a pattern and get yourself a bakery bear. You'll find yourself in a castle while watching the bakery bears. It never feels like a hassle to sit and watch the bakery bears. What's on your shelf or what's in your oven, or maybe a shawl you'll want to wear. So sit yourself right down and watch Dan and Kay, the bakery